There we go. All right. So now we're here. All right, Alex, how are you? You ready?
I'm fantastic. I was born ready.
All right, cool, cool. All right. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for being, volunteering to be able to do this. Just to give a little context to our viewers, I reached out to, asking if someone will be willing to participate in therapy live, and you were amazing. You said you would do that, and so I want to ask, what made you respond to that?
So for me, what's interesting, the first thing that made me respond, I would say in a sense, is I'm somebody I love volunteering for things, just new experiences, new opportunities. That was really the first urge I would say I felt was just, hey, this is something new, different. I've seen some of your posts. Definitely, we've never met or talked before today, and you strike me as an interesting individual. That was a big part of it. And then the other side of it too, and I mentioned this to you just a moment ago, was personally, I have never done anything therapy related, and it's something that's been on my mind. I've thought, what could I gain from it? I haven't had those thoughts in the last few years. And something else that I mentioned earlier too is that personally, I used to have somewhat of a negative view towards therapy. I don't know if it was just sort of a macho feeling, or if it was a feeling somehow sort of looking down on it. I don't know exactly why or where I got that feeling from, but over the last few years, I've realized, hey, therapy helps lots of people in lots of ways. And at the end of the day, it's good to be able to express yourself and feel your feelings and sit with them and whatnot. And so I have had some of those thoughts lately where I'm like, hey, what could I gain from something like this? So when I saw your post, I was like, well, hey, I love volunteering and trying new things. Here's somebody offering something I've never done before, and it would be a great opportunity to try it. And I like put myself out there on the stage. So doing this live to me is just all the more interesting as well.
You get the adrenaline going, right?
Yeah, it does.
So look, so just so for our viewers to know, I'm being responsible. I already kind of told you about safety stuff before we got started, right? If I
Yes.
thought you were a risk to yourself, I'm gonna do whatever I can. And this is what a real therapy session would look like, to make sure that you were safe, like that you weren't gonna try to harm yourself or anyone else. But outside of that, I would normally say everything is confidential besides that. But since we're streaming live on Facebook, anybody which you've consented to that sees this is going to know what we're chatting about. Okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted to chime in on what you said about your kind of curiosity with therapy, and then also that curiosity was because at one point in time you kind of looked down on it, and so you're not the only person that has that. There's a lot of stigma that deals with mental health, but take out mental health, there's a lot of stigma with people asking for help in general. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So what I like to tell my clients is, and since you're my client today, is that therapy is a conversation, and the
Mhm.
conversation is about you. Okay. And so you're an expert on you. And what I do is to create a safe environment for you to explore some issues or an issue that you may have, right? And help you kind of look at those issues and to get clarity on those issues. Are you ready
Mhm.
for that?
Absolutely. Looking
Okay.
forward to it.
All right. So I know briefly you said something. You was like, hey, maybe I might kind of talk about something about the pandemic. Can we start there?
Certainly. Yes.
Okay.
So where would you like to start?
Let's start with what has been most challenging for you so far with the pandemic.
I would say the thing that's been most challenging. So for me personally, what happened was I moved to a new town right before the pandemic broke out. So I had been living in Portland, Oregon for 5 years. I had been planning on opening an office for the company I work for in Reno, Nevada for over a year. I moved there actually in September of 2011, or 2011, what am I saying? 2019, mixing up all kinds of years. Sorry, 2019. But we didn't actually open the office till February. We had some challenges with licensing. We do home improvement. So I didn't actually really settle into Reno until February, right at the beginning of the month. And no less than like 3 weeks later, next thing you know, we're in this worldwide pandemic. So biggest challenge for me has been being in a new town, not really knowing a lot of people, not really even knowing the town, and just adjusting to that side of life, as well as being there to open an office and get something going business wise. But I'd say the biggest challenge for me is I've definitely had feelings of loneliness, being in a new town, not knowing many people, living on my own. I don't have any family there. I didn't move there with friends. I've had to build that network during a pandemic, which has certainly been a challenge.
So let me get this straight, because I always want to clarify what I'm hearing. So you were in Oregon and you moved to Nevada?
Yep.
Okay. And you were only there for about 3 weeks and then things start shutting down or whatever the case might be.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, okay. And then the last thing I heard you say about the loneliness. So, in my experience with clients, that's not an uncommon thing, the loneliness, right? When you first move away, especially if you're moving to a place where you've never been before. But here is this other caveat of things probably likely being shut down and not being able to find places to connect and things like that.
Mhm.
What has worked for you in the past, pre-COVID, being able to try to connect with new people if you were in a new environment?
That's a good question because I'm someone who's moved around quite a bit. So I grew up in Southern California, but then ever since I left my parents' house at 18, I have lived in Seattle, Boise, Vegas, Portland, Seattle last summer, then to Reno. And so I've moved around quite a bit, and that's I mean, I'm used to having to make friends and things like that everywhere I go. So when you ask where, I mean, most of the people I become friends with are usually the people I work with. I don't generally make a lot of friend networks outside of work. Now it's been on my mind as I came to Reno. That's something I kind of wanted to change actually, is saying, hey, this is a town I can see myself in for a while. I want to settle in and really build a sense of community. And that's been a challenge this year.
Okay. So not so you've been able to connect before. You moved around a lot and you've been able to connect before, but you kind of had a similar dynamic to the pandemic in that you only went as far as what was in your proximity as far as connecting with people.
I do have to say that, especially in 2019, was a wild year for me. I don't know how much you want to get into some of these details, but I was all over the map doing lots of things for the company I work for. And it's funny because when the pandemic broke out, there was a piece of me that's like, oh, guess what, everyone? Not knowing what you're doing for more than a month at a time, not really being able to connect with a lot of people, like doing a lot of things on your own. I've been doing that for over a year now, like on an extreme level. So I was like, kind of, welcome to my arena. Like, so in a way, I was a little bit more prepared for the pandemic, I think, than the average person.
Gotcha. Okay. So can you think maybe why, although it may have somewhat prepared you a little bit more than other people, can you think maybe why you've never really ventured outside of work relationships to make friends or connections?
Um, that's a good question. My first answer that's coming to my mind is I definitely recognize there's some workaholism in me for
Okay.
sure. And I've talked about it with my family. I'm here with my mom and my sister for Thanksgiving. We were talking about some of that definitely comes from my dad. Like my dad, always a workaholic for sure. Um, yeah, that's something where I see myself because I love socializing. I love having friends, but I definitely put work and career and advancing on that as a priority. And so it's now as I'm getting old, I'm 32 now. It's interesting to reflect on, okay, at what point am I going to slow down and enjoy the things I've been working so hard for? But I know I'm still on a path of growth on a professional level that is a top priority for me.
So you said something so key, and I love to say that sometimes we have to say things out loud. So you said earlier, I tend to make friends and I'm very social. See, when I think of friends, I think of like connections, deep connections, right? When I think of coworkers or associates, it's a little bit more superficial. And so then I was about to ask this question, but you can clarify the last thing you said, workaholic and when I'm gonna be able to enjoy some of these things. Now, see, I could have assumed earlier when you said you had all these friends and you were very sociable that you enjoyed, not saying you didn't enjoy work, but maybe these connections. So what things is it that you aren't enjoying?
Just socializing more. Like I am a very social creature. I love socializing, but I've also been working on my discipline of saying, okay, but I want to set aside some of those things that I purely enjoy just for fun to focus on things that I believe are going to advance my life in my career. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I mean, the things that I feel like I'm not enjoying as much is I've done it for years. I've been in sales for over 10 years. Just missing out on certain events. I mean, I remember when I first got into sales, that was something that sort of beat in my head. Is like, oh, you can miss birthday parties, you can miss this kind of stuff, you can miss all these fun things because you're working really hard and you're gonna live this great life down the road. But I've realized now, after doing it for 10 years, like how long are you like, I'm chasing something that I'm never gonna reach, that I need to slow down and enjoy where I'm at. And that's been a big focus of mine these last 2 years or so for me personally. It was when I turned 30 in 2018, I started realizing, hey, I need to slow down and live in the moment and enjoy the present. And I've been doing a lot more of that these last 2 years, and it's made a huge difference for my overall happiness.
So I'm hearing that part of what has changed over the last couple of years for you is what you value. Like the prior years, you valued, a lot of times I hear the word success, whatever that may look like for that person, as far as work is concerned. But in valuing that success, you've somewhat neglected or put to the side maybe connections with possibly family, because you said birthday parties and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, granted, my family, we all, I would say, with certainly like love each other, but we are not super lovey-dovey like in the way we express it. So that's one thing. But I was also going to say, I mean, for me, I think the big shift that's really changed for me is, I think for a long time when I first got into sales, I had this feeling of I'm working towards a destination, and if I work hard enough, I'll get there faster, right? And that's what's the realization I've had now since I turned 30 is you got to enjoy the journey, enjoy where you're at, connect with where you're at, connect with the people around you, just enjoy the moments around you. That has been a big perspective shift for me, and I'm much happier.
Never decided where there was. It's not uncommon when I hear people, and I mean, it is males and females, right? They'll say, I'm trying, I want to be successful, or the term you use is get there. But once they start realizing that they're going, they may have never established where there is. Did you ever establish that?
Personally, no, I don't have a clear destination of where success is going to be for me. And it's been evolving for me. One of the biggest questions I've worked on for a long time is what is my why? I was first introduced to that concept when I was 22, when I first got into sales, is what is your why? And I remember at 22, the first time I stopped and thought about that, I was like, I have no clue. Like, I have no idea what my passion, my purpose is. I've never thought about that. I've just kind of marched along in life up to this point. And so what I quickly realized then, at least it gave me some sense of purpose and motivation, was personally, and this was at 22, 23, I realized, okay, but so my why is to have as positive and as large an impact as I can on the world. And I was like, I don't have any more definition to it than that, but even just holding on to that age, that time of my life felt good. I mean, it gave me something to go after. I was like, I don't know what it is, but at least I know I want to be big and I want to be positive. And over time, what I've really discovered is I certainly have a passion for sales and leadership. And so now I have more of I actually just thought this thing in the last couple of weeks as I was talking to my current sales team, then now I'm coaching them on leadership and things like that. And one of the things I've realized is one of my now life goals that I have is I would love to open up a school of some kind one day that is involved in teaching. Actually, I already came up with a name for it. There's an acronym, SELL. It'd be sales, entrepreneurship, leadership, and legacy.
Okay.
So that's something that gives me some passion. What's that?
That sounds like a destination.
Yeah, so I have more of a destination I thought of recently than I have much in the past. So yeah, so I know that I want to create something in the future that will have, legacy is one of my keywords. I love the idea of creating something bigger than myself that will last beyond me.
So aside from saving the world, right? And you asked me, you're doing that by volunteering to do the session with me. How does your goal of, well, we haven't really clarified it all the way, but being more relational, right? How does that fit into your goal of building sale?
Connection. That's something I've been working on so much lately. Just that word. It's about being present. So I realized that starting a couple of years ago, people have started making comments to me like, "Wow, you're so positive. You're infectious to be around. Like, I love your energy." And I started getting that a lot 2 years ago. And I realized all it is, and all I focus on is two things: it's being present and being real. Like, just be authentic. And that's one of the things I talk to people about a lot. Is that there's just so much fakeness in the world, right? Fake news and fake stuff on social media and fake people in real life, fake interactions. Just, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Like, there's so much fakeness, and it's just, I'm all about just be real, right? You have to be authentic, be yourself, and people appreciate that. So I've been working on that quite a bit. So I would say my relationships in the last couple of years have really improved, and it's interesting because I have had a few people point this out to it, and I've realized that I don't have a lot of close relationships in my life currently. Like, I'm somebody who keeps a very small, tight circle, but I want to expand that circle because I love connecting with people, and that's been a big thing on my mind that I'm looking to do more and more as I move along in my career and my life. But really, it starts locally, and it starts with the people you connect with. And in this case, I'd consider you local because we're part of the same group on Facebook, and that's how this even came together. So, but that's why I wanted to do it. It's on my mind just to connect with people and have experiences. And who knows, some of them, maybe this is it, I never talk to you again, or maybe this is the start of something where we have a relationship for years, and I'm open to all possibilities.
Gotcha. So here's where Dr. D asks questions sometimes that can sting.
Oh, I'm ready. I sting. Okay. I don't know why.
So now that was your corporate answer, right? I want your non-corporate answer. You told me about sale and how, just, your drive to want to save the world and all those things are great. I'm not knocking those at all. What is keeping you from, you said you're working toward those and you're reaching out, but I'm saying like having more intimate relationships. Like if your circle, let's say for example, is 2 or 3 people, if before being a workaholic was preventing you from doing it, but now you realize it's something you're missing. What's keeping you now from expanding that circle a little bit more?
That's a good question. I know one of the things I've identified in myself lately is I'm very picky about who I make strong connections with. Like, I know that. Like I connect with a lot of people on a superficial surface level. I always say as a salesperson, you're a professional meet and greeter. Like you just meet people all day long and you connect, right?
Right.
And maybe this session could help with this. Like I'm not actually sure why I'm so picky on who I make strong connections with. I don't have the answers to that off the top of my head. But I know that I'm very selective about the people that I really want to make a strong bond with.
Okay. And I personally think it's healthy that you do discriminate, if you will. You don't want everybody, especially if you've built a circle of positivity and not, you don't want to just open up to anybody and you have a lot of toxic things that
Yes.
come into your sphere, or people that aren't going the same direction as you. But you said you're 32 and you've been doing this for 10 years, I believe. You said 10
Yeah.
years?
Yeah.
Is it possible, again, we're exploring this together, that you may not know how to connect and get those deeper relationships?
Oh, certainly. Oh, yeah. If you want to go that direction, that's something that me and my I have 3 siblings. We've talked about this kind of stuff often. Where for me, I realized that around age probably 21, 22. With me, my siblings, my family, my entire life never talked about relationships, feelings, emotions. That is my family. We never talked about those things. And it was right around the 21, 22. I went to college. It was my junior, senior year in there where I started to realize, like, oh, there's lots of other people and lots of other families that talk about this stuff very openly. And I was very jealous of that at the time. I was envious of that. Like, I was like, oh man, I want more of that in my life. And so now it's been for 10 years. At first I became aware of it and now I've been working on it. So I've been working on it for 10 years, slowly but surely on my own. I've never had a therapy session before. And maybe if I'd done this earlier, maybe it would help me with these types of things. But I would agree with that assessment to a certain degree. I just don't know how. That's very fair question and most likely the case.
So that could possibly be why, like you said, I'm very careful, I believe the word you said, about who I allow in my circle. Well, if I don't know how to connect with people, I may do something to bring someone in my circle that I don't want in my circle. So I may prod away at it little by little until I figure it out. You know what I mean? You see where I'm
Yes,
going with that?
definitely.
And so the underlying word is fear. Being afraid. Being afraid. The only way you're going to know how to get better at connecting with people is connecting with people without the corporate interview. Am I saying go and have a therapy session with everyone that you talk to? No, absolutely not. But I always talk about my voice. I say I'm a voice. There have probably been people, and you can confirm or deny this, that you've had some interest in connecting with, maybe a little bit deeper than water cooler conversations or watching the game or something like that. But then that small fearful voice says, no, I'm not really sure, and you back off. Maybe those are the people that you may want to lean more toward, not just don't jump into the deep end, but definitely moving more toward that. Have you had an experience like that?
I was gonna say, here's what the voice in my head tells me. I don't think it's fear, but there is almost a elitist element to it where I'm like, they're not good enough to want to be inside my circle.
Okay.
That's been a big part of it. Is I'm very selective because of the caliber person I believe they are. Is this person going to add to my life or not? Like, that's some of the judgment that's going on in my head. Is this person going to be a waste of time?
Judgment come from family dynamics? Did your family relate to people in the same way?
Oh, certainly. I mean, my mom, this was like a couple months ago, would literally like refer to us as elite. And I was like, but like, it's sort of a derogatory, judgmental way. And I was like, oh, I don't agree with that. So, so I'm now realizing that I think it's been ingrained in my head for years, you know, with my family, that I've thought of myself as this elite, higher level person, but in a judgmental way. Right. And so now I've come to terms with like, oh, I don't like that side of me. So I've been working on that just in the last like year or two.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I don't like judging people. That doesn't feel right. But I'm not realizing in the past I did that for years.
So when is it possible? Do you think it would be helpful for you when that voice comes, you meet somebody and that voice comes and says, you know, I'm more elite or they're not good enough, that maybe you could try to just look at that person to see what you may have in common?
That is a big part of what I do. That's the flip that I made a couple years ago with just being present and just viewing every person and every opportunity as an experience. And believe me, I don't think that way anymore. Like I believe everybody has value and everybody brings something to the table, and you can learn and gain something from just about everybody, right? So I have personally already been making that shift on my own.
Okay. So you made that shift is, and so you say it's been for a couple of years.
Yeah.
What, if anything, when you find those connections while you're present, hinders you from going further?
I mean, lately it's just been circumstance. I mean, 2019 was a year where I moved all over the place and do whatever my company wanted me to do. And then 2020 with the pandemic, it's just been hard to connect with people. It's just been hard to get out there and meet people. So I think I'm at a place where I'm ready for more deeper connections in my life. Because I think the reason why I didn't have it is it's an inside game, right? Like I think there was things in myself that I needed to work on, and that's what I have been working on for some years. And now I think I'm at a point where I'm like in my own mind, my own world, I'm like, cool, I'm ready to have some of these deeper connections. And then these last 2 years have been just this whirlwind of work and kind of moving around and just a lot of crazy stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm ready for these kind of connections. That's why I was even happy to connect with you today and do something like this. Like I love connecting with people, I realized. And it's just now, like you said, it's just I need to practice it more. I'm someone who hasn't practiced that for years. It is relatively new to me. I think for the couple of years I've been ready for it. And that's why for me moving somewhere new, I was like, cool, I can settle in somewhere and really build some sense of community and some connections with people in that area. And then the pandemic hit. It's like, well, damn, like that's some kind of wild timing.
So, as we kind of bring it in a little, in a perfect world, if you were able to have the connection, let's say just with one person, right? One new person, have that connection that you were talking about. What would that look like? Because remember, we were talking about success, and I was like, oftentimes I have clients that they talk about success, but they never define what that looks like, and then until they define it, they really don't have anything they're going toward. They're just going. So you're like deeper connection, deeper connection, deeper connection is very broad. So in a perfect world, if you were able to get that deeper connection, what would that look like?
Well, so one of the things I really, and this has only just been the last like couple months, I really focus on is energy. Like I am starting to realize how important energy is. I mean, energy is a concept that we've always talked about, but I don't think I've ever understood it on the level that I do now. And I realized because I first started thinking about when it came to sales, and that's one of the things I've really taught people is, sales done right, I believe is a beautiful thing. And there's a feeling, right? Like rapport. That's one of my favorite words because it's such a hard word to define. We can describe how it feels better than what it is, right? It's more of a feeling than anything. And so as I've started to explore that concept myself, I've started to realize rapport it's all about energy. And I first really got that from Jordan Belfort. And he talks about vibrations and energy. And I was like, that's really what it's about. And then I've started to extrapolate that beyond just sales. I mean, human relationships are all about energy. So when I think about a deeper connection, it's when you find someone that you match each other's energy and it doesn't take effort. Okay. Right? Because we've been in those situations where it's like, yeah, you can kind of force hanging out with somebody and it's okay. But there's people that you meet where there's this energy that you connect. It's effortless. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it's about for me. I feel it when I find those people. There are people that I find that we connect and it does not take effort.
Okay. So when you talk about that energy, do you see yourself with connecting that energy with a partner or significant other? Or do you see yourself connecting that energy with, a friend, that you would hang out with on a regular basis? Or are you just saying this energy, when you say deeper connections, that you would just have this bigger circle of friends? That's where I'm
it goes in every direction for every type of relationship, in my opinion. Because I first started thinking about this when I was thinking about with relationships, like when you have a significant other, what I realized is, to me, this is something I came up with a little bit ago. I said in my own head, one of my definitions of love is when you desire to match someone's energy, and the less effort it takes, then probably the more in love you are. But like, because I was hanging out with this one girl where sometimes she'd be really low energy. When I first come to see her, I'd come in really high energy. I'd be like just coming off of work, like she'd maybe been relaxing for a few hours. Like I was coming in off of work, like super high energy, and she would always be really thrown off by it. She'd be like, "Whoa, like you're really throwing me off." And then I was like, "Oh, like I care about this person." So I'm gonna when I first see her, I'm gonna match her energy. And whenever I did that, like just the interaction was always 1,000 times more positive and just went really well. Versus those times where, so there would be times where I'd want to come in at just whatever energy level I was at, but if I didn't try to match her, it would throw off the interaction. But whatever she was at, if I tried to match it, something different completely happened in a very positive way. Okay. So that's where I first started becoming aware of it. That was maybe 6 months ago or so.
So when you said you think it's on all levels, and I usually give a homework assignment.
Okay.
I would say that, because this is our initial session, and I always say the initial session is like, it's a chat session where, well, it's two fancy words for it. I always tell people it's diagnostic interview, is diagnostic assessment is essentially what it is. But really, it's just a Q&A where the two of us are getting to know one another. I'm building a rapport with you so that you trust me to be able to talk more about more sensitive things and what have you. But I always still give homework because I say that you're only with your therapist for a short period of time. It's less than an hour, right? The real work happens outside of session. And just in hearing what you're saying, I know for the most part, what you don't want. But I am still unclear about what you do want. And so I would probably feel that you need more clarity in that area as well. So my suggestion would be to just, and I'm pretty confident that you would do the homework assignment. Because if we were having a follow-up session and you didn't do the homework assignment, I'd give you an F. That's always my joke. But what the F looks like is that we have to do your homework in session instead of being able to talk about whatever else. But essentially, just really getting very specific about what you want, because energy, I've done a lot of energy work this year myself. And that, being more able to discern different types of energy, that's great. But I do know for a fact, even with someone that has quote unquote matching energy, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be a part of my close circle. You know what I mean? And it sounds like, you've matched energy in different ways over time, but you're wanting something deeper than that. So to sit down and specify that. So here's an example. Like if you were looking for a partner relationship, I hear everybody say, well, what do you want? Oh, I want someone to love me, and I want someone that we can spend time together and blah. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, but what do you really want? Like, what do you see that, how do you see the two of you spending time out in the world? How do you see the two of you communicating and resolving conflict? Like all of those things, getting really specific. Like when you order a meal, you don't usually say, just bring me whatever you got. Like you're telling them what kind of condiments to put on it, how, if it's a steak, you're telling them how to cook the steak. That's how you need to specify this relationship thing. Are you following me?
100%. Actually, I want to respond to that because, so one of the things that first got me to really, so this is actually a big thing that put me on this journey I first listened to it in 2018. There's a video that someone put together of Matthew McConaughey of all people, which is kind of funny, but it's two different speeches of his that I kind of spliced together. I didn't realize it was two speeches for a while. But a big part of the message is he talks about, in order to really find yourself, start by defining what you're not. So it's interesting you're picking up on that, because that's what I've spent a lot of time on, is what I don't want, in eliminating that first to help get more clarity on what I do want. And then what's kind of interesting is this happened, maybe it was at least about a year ago. It was probably like last November. It was so funny how this happened. I was going to write a message to Ryan Stewman on Facebook Messenger one day, because I saw him put a post about him and Amy and his relationship with her and how amazing it was. And there was a piece of me that was like, man, I want to kind of just hear how that even happened. Maybe I can get some inspiration from it. So what's kind of funny is I opened up a message to him, never started writing it, and then just closed it. And the next morning he was like, hey, you opened up a message to me, but didn't do anything. Like, what's up? I was like, oh, damn. Like, he reached back out to me. Like, that's cool. So I wrote him a message. I was like, hey, I just saw your post yesterday about you and Amy. I thought it was awesome. I was really inspired by it. And I was curious, how you were able to get into a relationship that makes you so happy. And so his response was exactly what you just said. He's like, write it down. He's like, write down exactly what you're looking for, very, very, very specifically. And I did it once, but it was pretty vague. I know it wasn't
Right.
as specific as it needed to be. And that's what you're picking up on right now, right? Like the clarity is not there. And I do need to spend some more time sitting with that. And I think reflecting on it. And to be blunt though, I work so much, I don't even take the time to reflect on my things that make me happy on a personal level as much as I do genuinely believe that I should. So yes, I'm with you where I definitely do. I think you're picking up on like greatly. Like I do need to spend some time to sit down and get more clarity and stuff on the specifics of what I want in my life.
We tend to already have the skills that we need. I mean, by the time adulthood, we have skills. What we struggle with is adapting those skills in other areas. So go back to sales. You're like, you're doing sales for 10 years now. I'm thinking, could be wrong, but if I'm a betting woman, I probably win. If you've been doing it for 10 years and you're still able to eat and survive, then you're probably good at it, right?
Yes.
So you don't just show up and say, I'm gonna sell some stuff, right?
Right.
And then hope it comes out in the wash. Like you get real specific on what you're gonna sell, how much you're gonna sell, who you're gonna sell it to, right? That's the same thing I'm asking you to do
Yes.
in this other area. So you're just transferring skills you already got. You already have.
Yes.
You follow me?
Yes.
All right. So I like to wrap up the session with reflection. Okay. So usually I only ask one question, but since you have volunteered your time, you get a bonus question.
Right.
All right. So first, what is one thing that you are taking? Well, I'll probably give you three. What is one thing you're taking away from our session today?
I can't help but think about just the last thing. I think is what hit home the most for me is I do realize that I need to spend more time on the specifics of what I want, because that will help me, I think, with my friendships, with my interpersonal relationships of all kinds, of just what success exactly looks like to me. I do think that's something I need to spend more time with. And I think even just talking to you here today is a reminder. I've had some of these thoughts in the past, but I think it's just reminding me, hey, it's important to spend time, sit down and be clear on these things, and be intentional about going about them in the future.
What is one thing you kind of answered it, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. My second question was going to be, what is one thing you're going to do differently in the next week with regard to what we discussed today?
Especially when you ask it, even on a friend level, you say, what does that connection look like? What's a deeper connection? I want to sit down and write that down of what do I look for on a deeper connection on a friend level from a significant other. I mean, I'm currently single, so I think at least those two things I want to sit down. But I've never thought about. I got the idea from Ryan Stewman about a significant other, but I've never thought about it for a friendship either. Like, what exactly does like an awesome group of friends look like to me? What are the things we do together? What are the things we talk about? And I have some of those ideas loosely in my mind, but I think sitting down and getting some clarity will really help.
Cool. Then maybe that, not fear, but apprehension, maybe that's a better word, wouldn't be there with those friends connections. So I know early in the call, you said, basically was sharing that you never had a therapy experience before.
Right.
So now you've had an opportunity to experience that. Thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. Dr. D doesn't care. I want you to be as real as possible about what your experience has been like with therapy today, because this is what we just did.
Yeah, my first thought absolutely is positive. I mean, definitely has been a positive experience. I mean, at the end of the day, who doesn't love talking about themselves, right? I don't know. Maybe some people don't, but I don't know. As a salesperson, I mean, anyone who has any sense of ego usually does. I mean, I love talking about myself. But more than that, I mean, it's definitely just. I think it's good to be able to bounce off of somebody, just ideas, questions, whatever that may be. That's the feeling I'm getting from this, and that's. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, as I mentioned when I first was talking about it, like for a few years, I've thought, hey, I'm open to the idea. Now, actually trying something like this for the first time, I would tell anybody to go for it. I don't think you have to be in a dark place to need therapy. I'm not in a dark place, but I still feel like this has very much been a benefit.
Mm-hmm. To summarize what you're saying is, I'm going to share something that my son said. So we all have a voice. My son says to me one day, or as we're going, so he's like, Mom, like therapy isn't real. So what do you mean? He was like, people only come to you to get permission. And I said, tell me more. He was like, because they already know what they need to do, and I was like, yeah, you got it. So people don't come to me. They think they do. They think
Yes.
they're to the therapist to get advice or but what they're really doing is coming for a place, because it's not always like that outside of therapy, when you're talking to people, because we have all these masks and superficial personas that we put out, to just be themselves and just really get in tune with that inner voice that is often silenced. Was that your experience today?
Absolutely. And that is something I've been working on quite a bit. And I see how these types of sessions can help draw more of that out.
Cool beans. Well, Alex, I so appreciate you investing your time in not just yourself, but investing your time in Dr. D at Assert Yourself LLC Mindset Coaching and Counseling. If anybody who is watching this wants to find out more about my services, you can go to assertyourself.com. Share this with a friend who may not know what therapy looks like. You got to see it today with me and Alex, and you
This is
guys
what it looks
have a day. All
like. All
right.
right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You as well.